referring to us as woke was just mind-boggling to me. Just as Steve Bannon said, it means that she hasn't spent the time to understand who and what the American people are, what the MAGA movement is, and why they have concerns about this program. And so to make sure that everybody around the world understands why this is such a big debate, the H-1B visa program is essentially a foreign worker visa that allows employers to hire workers into, quote unquote, specialty programs, essentially for people who have some sort of a specialized knowledge. But to be clear, the program has been around since 1990, so the results aren't up for debate. We were just simply lied to about what we were told it was going to do, which was to source the top 1% of talent globally. Instead, they're using the program to source cashiers, teachers, janitors, PR people. So I'm going to have to believe that the American people are very much capable and willing to fulfill those positions, and that instead this program has been completely abused to get foreign workers here who then have a pathway to citizenship, and it lowers worker wages and it's harming the American people. So I am not fond of it. And I'll add here that prior to his passing, Lou Dobbs of Fox News looked into the program and he determined that 7 out of the 10 H-1B positions were being outsourced from Indian corporations to American corporations. So it's not globally looking at the 1%. And 5 of those 7 positions were category 1, which essentially just means that they didn't require any specialized knowledge. These are the janitors, these are the teachers, and they are just taking jobs away from the American people. So I just found her referring to this as an issue with being brown, or Americans having an issue with brown people, to be almost comical, to be honest. And I'd love to hear her further explain that position.
Okay, well, we're now going to hear it. Mikhaila, over to you.
So I don't know, Candace, if you're seeing what I'm seeing on X, but when I saw the H-1B debate going around, mostly what I saw was racism against Indians specifically. And I'm not saying there isn't a problem with the visa issue in the States in general. Getting top talent here is very difficult. Like, I had a very difficult time getting in, and I'm married to an American, and it was long and annoying, and they don't have a proper way to test people. So there's plenty of flaws to talk about. But I think right before the inauguration, having conservatives argue like amongst ourselves about an H-1B visa issue when we have an open border is silly, especially when it does kind of dredge up what I called the woke right on X. And I know you've scoffed at the term the woke right, but it encompasses these people that are focused on anti-Semitism, Jews, and they're pro-America, but their idea of America is this white America, similar to, I guess, what everyone's been arguing about for the last 200 years whenever anybody new comes into the country. And I do think it has to do with race. And I think you can see that from comments on Twitter. I mean, Vivek put up a picture. I don't know if you saw it. It wasn't Vivek. It was this horrible woman on Twitter. What's her name? Something Lupus. She's a doctor. She goes, "Oh, what do you guys think about this? Thoughts?" And it's a picture of Vivek and his brown family. And one of the most interacted with comments was subversive brown poop-eating parasites. And that's what flooded my feed. And I think I had some irritation because I'm, aligning with conservatives because the woke left has been a disaster for America and for Canada and for the West for years. And it's just frustrating to see them go at each other over something like an H-1B when there are bigger issues like an open border. And I think people are misunderstanding the H-1B, although it does have its issues as well. There's also the H-2B, which nobody knows about, and that's for people who are paid lower. The average wage for an H-1B visa is $118K. So there was all this talk on Twitter about how these people are underpaid and everything. $118K is pretty good. Companies, I don't think most companies, especially tech companies, are hiring H-1Bs to become more successful, to make more money. You're not making more money by getting H-1B visas in. You're making more money by having a successful company, by hiring top talent. So I don't think we're completely not aligned entirely, because I agree the visa process in America is ridiculous. And it doesn't test people, like I said, properly. But I think it's silly to fracture the Conservative Party by arguing about 85,000 H-1B visas when we have an open border. And I don't like the racism.
Okay. Candace, do you see common ground there in what you just heard from Mikhaila? And what do you also feel about the fact that for Steve Bannon and the diehard MAGA group, they look at this as a betrayal when they see Vivek and Elon and now Trump as well, all piling in, enthusiastically supporting this. They say, well, hang on, that's not about making America great again. They're not buying into, we need to get all these brilliant people coming here. They think it's a system that's being abused, and that it goes against the spirit of MAGA. So you're seeing a real interesting debate raging about the heart of what MAGA really means.
I think Steve Bannon fully has his finger on the pulse there, so he's completely right. And just to respond to the point about seeing racist comments on Twitter, I've heard this argument a lot of times from people where they'll suddenly pretend that if you take a position of something and they can find a racist comment beneath it, then you're on the side of the racist.
That's not what I'm doing.
That's just called... Well, I'm just saying that literally since the day that I started my accounts on Instagram, I've been called the N-word from left and the right. It's just welcome to the internet. Doesn't mean that these are the positions that are represented. In fact, this conversation that we're having is something that I would almost refer to as MAGA 101. This is like a freshman year class in MAGA college. I've been hearing this debate, have spoken about this debate on stage. I mean, I've spoken at more than 100 universities. And to be frank with you, because I came over from the left, when I first got into this movement, I thought the same thing. I thought, okay, well, I don't understand what the issue is if it's legal migration. But I then listened to people and I wanted to understand where people were coming from. And I opened my mind to what they were saying and realized that they were very much correct. And I think that's sort of where you get into trouble with the MAGA movement, when you just instantly sweep away and condemn everyone and say, well, some people were saying racist stuff about Indians, and so this entire argument now is based on racism. It simply isn't. Vivek, I personally stumped for Vivek. So if you think that I'm going to be on board with people being racist for him, when I went on the ground with him all throughout Iowa when he was running for president, of course not. I'm also brown myself, but I understand that this has nothing to do with the merits of the arguments that are being presented here. And it is just a fact that the H-1B visa, the majority of the people that are coming into this country are not coming in with any extraordinary skills, are not coming in because they're a part of the 1%. It is being completely abused and jobs are being taken away from the American people. Now, Piers, to your point about the MAGA rift, I'm glad to see it. I very much agree with Steve Bannon. I mean, the last estimate that was done, by the way, and this speaks to Mikhaila, you saying it's just 85,000 people that are allowed annually. Well, the last estimate that was done in 2019 approximated that 600,000 foreign nationals were here on this visa program, all of them being provided with a pathway to citizenship that doesn't include, in 2 years, you can then get out of that program and become a permanent resident. Okay, so that they're allowed to stay in this country from up to 6 years. They don't apply for permanent residency. Of course, we can assume that the majority of them do. And they're allowed to stay up to 10 years if they go to work for the Department of Defense. Again, all of these applicants have a pathway to citizenship. So you just imagine you're like, yeah, I just went to work in America as a teacher for a couple of years and I became a citizen, or as a janitor for a couple of years and I became a citizen. It's not okay. And I want to be clear, all across the board, it's not just the H-1B. There's a ton of visa programs that are being routinely abused. And like I said, I have faith in the American people. I think that the American people can fulfill those positions. I know they can fulfill those positions. And so I am not on the side of Elon Musk and Trump in this debate. And I think that, Elon Musk has been at Mar-a-Lago for a bit too long and thinks that that is the sample of what MAGA is, and it simply isn't. Steve Bannon has been on the ground and spoken to those people for years. He understands what they're saying. And it would be gracious for Elon Musk to kind of step down and recognize that he's simply wrong in this debate.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you actually posted to me on X, of course, owned by Elon Musk. You said, we'll have to get together in the new year so you can let me finish what I was going to say about Elon Musk. A lot has happened since I didn't finish that sentence. Exciting dialogue awaits. And we did leave people on a slight cliffhanger about Elon Musk. So now's your chance to finish that sentence, and then I'll get Mikhaila to respond. But I mean, Musk he's everywhere right now, literally poking his head into every country, it seems, in the world, particularly my country, where he's just in the last 2 days, he's called for the king to dissolve parliament, which he can't actually do. Mm-hmm. He's called for Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, to be imprisoned. He's hammered a previous Prime Minister, Gordon Brown. He's called another senior member of the cabinet here, an evil woman, Jess Phillips, who's been waging a rape genocide apology tour, I think is how he put it. I mean, this is inflammatory, incendiary stuff. What do you think his game plan is here?
Well, that was what I was going to say to you. And for people that haven't watched it, we were able to sit down and speak about a variety of issues, but we did disagree on Elon Musk. You said that he was a superhero, and I didn't say that he hadn't done superheroic things. You know, I thought that he was going to rescue speech on X. Even that's up for debate now, given the H-1B visa debate. But I was never keen on him essentially buying a seat at the table, which is what he's done, because we don't know what Elon Musk believes. You know, I am a Christian conservative. Elon Musk, of course, is going to be at odds with me and my beliefs because he wants to put brain chips in people's minds. He wants to go to Mars. You know, these things conflict with me theologically. You know, I think he's a transhumanist. What are his perspectives on marriage? He's had how many different women? I think he has up to 13 different children. What is Elon Musk's endgame? And we have not seen people interview him fairly. They're either incredibly hostile to him, like you saw with Don Lemon, or they're too friendly to him, and which they just see him as a superhero. And I would actually like to see someone sit down and flesh out what Elon Musk actually believes. What is his goal? What is he trying to contribute? Because I don't think you can say that you are a conservative if you are not ultimately trying to conserve the nuclear family unit. And I don't think that he's trying to do any of those things. And so we're now seeing that, okay, maybe this is about AI for him. Maybe this is about data collection for him. Maybe this is about him wanting to be the first person and getting a leg into federal governments so that he can do things that are on a larger scale in terms of artificial intelligence. I don't know the answer to that. And not knowing the answer to that made me uncomfortable when people did what we always speak against, which is essentially turn him into a celebrity, that worship him like he's Taylor Swift, and think that because he's got tons of money and bought X, that he's now suddenly allowed to direct us on politics. I just am not into celebrity worship culture.
Mikhaila, interestingly, Elon Musk began following you on X just 3 days ago. And that happened after you complained that you thought YouTube was trying to shadow ban your father Jordan's interview with Tommy Robinson, very controversial figure over here in the UK. What did you think when Elon began following you?
I mean, I'm an Elon fan, so I kind of had a bit of a fangirl moment. And I'm not a fan of celebrity culture, like Candace said, either. I don't usually follow that stuff, but I appreciate what Elon's doing. And I think it's totally fair if you're trying to give the world internet and doing what he's doing for the better of civilization, which I totally believe, that he has a seat at the table. He's also brilliant. So maybe some people don't understand what they're doing, but maybe it's an IQ difference thing.
Well, okay. I mean, look, I think he's a genius, no question. But I also think he does seem to amplify to his own gigantic audience. I mean, I don't know how many gazillion followers he now has, but well over 150 million, I think. I think it's 200 million. He amplifies all sorts of random people, some of whom are utterly appalling. The worst kind of horrible, extreme right-wing headbangers, and he's giving them this massive platform to spew often complete nonsense. Now, underpinning it, I think he's well-intentioned in that if you take the rape scandal in the UK, for example, he's not wrong that it was a disgraceful scandal. There was an appalling cover-up, and there should be a big national inquiry. But when he calls for the king to dissolve parliament, which he can't actually do, when he calls for the prime minister to be jailed, all these kind of things, when he really personally abuses in the most awful way Jess Phillips, who's a female MP, when we've had 2 members of parliament in the UK murdered in the last 10 years, and he's basically putting a massive target on her head for random headbangers to, go after this, as he put it, genocidal rape apologist. I mean, you couldn't think of a worse thing to say about a woman who's actually campaigned a lot in this area for many years. So I think there is a danger with Elon doesn't quite perhaps comprehend his own power on his own platform.
I mean, that's probably true. I think anybody at his level is going to be impossible to comprehend what kind of power you have. Having any type of social media following, it's shocking when people agree with you. So that's definitely true. I don't know enough about Jess Phillips, but after reading what happened to, apparently at least 250,000 girls in the UK.
Well, we don't know how many. I mean, that figure I think has been plucked out of thin air, really. I mean, what we do know.
But then some people have said more, right? And some people have said less. It's still an alarming
lot. What we can agree on is that thousands of young girls, very young, mainly underage girls, were systematically raped and abused and drugged and fed alcohol and treated like underage prostitutes by predominantly British Pakistani men in the north of England in up to 50 towns and villages. That is a horrendous scandal. And there was an equally horrendous cover-up from the bottom right to the top of local council authorities and councillors to police who are supposed to be doing their job investigating it, to government at all levels. So all of that is true. And it's been a scandal. It's not true that mainstream media ignored it. In fact, it was exposed originally by the Times in the UK, one of the big selling national daily newspapers. They ran a campaign for many years. They started it. They had a whistleblower who'd been one of the victims. It's not true that Tommy Robinson exposed this in the way he tries to pretend. And I'm also not sure that people in America fully understand who Tommy Robinson is, or what his record is. I mean, this is a guy who's been to prison 3 times now. He was convicted for attacking a police officer, convicted of, as we now know, contempt of court. He nearly wrecked 2 of the cases involving the rapists. 2 of their cases, and he collapsed because he was outside court saying defamatory things. He's been convicted of mortgage fraud, convicted of using a fake passport to get into the United States to avoid them discovering his criminal record. He was a leader of a football hooligan gang in Britain, committing endless acts of violence. This guy is not, I think, the hero that you really want to choose your hill to die on publicly supporting. And yet many Americans are doing that, which I find quite concerning. I would have thought it should at least...
I did.
Well, it should at least make Americans stop when they see that, and I know you're not American, you're Canadian, but if you take someone like Nigel Farage, who runs the Reform Party in the UK, the fact that he won't have anything to do with Tommy Robinson ought to ring alarm bells to the right in America, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's all fair. And as soon as I posted something that said free, it said something like free Tommy right now, right? And that gained a lot of support. And I had a number of people reach out and explain all that to me. But I don't think somebody like Tommy would have risen to where he's at now and gained the amount of support he had if there hadn't been so much corruption in the UK covering this all up.
Well, I think that may be true.
Because maybe he shouldn't be the hero.
I think that may be true. And I also think on that point, just to jump in, I also think not only is that undeniably true, but also he has been deliberately amplified as the kind of bogeyman by the other side because they know he's so flawed and so damaged and so in many ways lacking credibility because of his extensive criminal record and so on. They're quite happy for him to be the front man having a go at them because they think it gives them a bit of a pass. I think that can also be true.
Yeah, agreed. As for Elon getting involved in it, I think that's probably a reaction because there's been so much jumping up and down about Islamophobia for the last 10-ish years that if people in the UK, especially in the government and police officers, were actually scared to talk about what was going on for fear of being deemed Islamophobic, that's a huge problem. If we can't discuss child rape because we're worried about being called racist. Like, I understand where Candace is coming from, saying don't throw the racist term around. I do get that, and it's a slippery slope. I completely understand that. But I think what happened and what's going on in the UK is so egregious and so awful. Like, I can't think of a lot worse than finding out about something like this, especially given it's been going on for so long. And especially even people who haven't been talking about it because of the fear of being called Islamophobic. I can't think of anything worse. So I can see why Elon's freaking out.
I agree with you. And I listen, I've discussed with Candace before this very lazy trait people have of apportioning that kind of label to anybody for absolutely anything to shut down debate. I've got to say, in the case of Tommy Robinson, I think he's an unashamed Islamophobe. I mean, this is a guy who, when I interviewed him, one time I interviewed him, started waving the Quran around and just openly abusing everything about Islam. And to me, that is the definition of an Islamophobic person. So it doesn't mean there aren't people who aren't racist or Islamophobes or sexist or transphobes or any of those things. It doesn't mean there aren't any. Yeah, but it just means you have to be careful about how you throw that kind of accusation around and that your primary motivation is not to shut down debate. I think Tommy Robinson was right to continue to highlight the scandal of the rape gangs, but he didn't expose it And I also think there's a big self-interest with him in spewing deliberate lies about the Muslim community and constantly attacking Islam because it makes him money. And I'm very cynical about that. And I think that can also be true.
I would also,
Candace.
Yeah, I also want to add here, just just regarding Elon Musk shifting gears and even speaking about that issue, you are correct. Obviously, I follow UK politics to some degree because of who I'm married to. And I will tell you that it very much seemed to me like he was drudging up this issue because he was getting so much backlash on the H-1B visa. So I don't really know how sincere Elon Musk was when he weighed into that issue at all. Suddenly,
no one's not.
Do you mind if I finish my sentence, Mikhaila? You've just been talking for a long time. Do you mind if I? There's not a time. There's not a time. Do you mind if I finish my sentence?
It's hard to address them all.
Do you mind if I finish my sentence? I feel like I've let you speak.
I mean, a bit, but go ahead.
Everyone's speaking.
Go ahead.
You mind letting me finish my sentence?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mikhaila. So what I was just going to say is it seemed very much to us that he was just trying to shift gears because basically he was trending for almost 2 weeks over the H-1B visa, and he was doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down. And then suddenly he's just advising on UK politics. And like you said, this issue hasn't been going on forever. It was extensively covered by the mainstream media. It was not brought up by Tommy Robinson. We can have a discussion about what's going on in the UK. That's great. I'm glad that he has spotlighted the issue. But you are correct that most Americans are not up to date on what's happening there. So it did seem like a random shift. And Mikhaila, I do have to say, you say that you're not into celebrity culture, but the way that you respond regarding Elon Musk is very much like a Swiftie. I mean, you haven't even heard what I have to say. You're defending everything he says and does to the point that all you do is issue ad hominem attacks. I mean, your first response back when we were speaking about Elon Musk is, well, it must be an IQ thing if people don't understand him. You keep just calling people stupid. People are racist. No, people are having a different opinion than Elon Musk. And you don't have to have a higher IQ than Elon Musk to have a different opinion from him. Quite frankly, I don't think he is the most socially sharp person in the entire world. He's done incredible things. We can definitely say that he is a genius. It does not make him right on issues of immigration spanning from here to the UK. It's ridiculous. I mean, he's not a king.
Mikhaila?
I think saying that Elon is upset about child rape because a bunch of people he doesn't really care about were flapping about the H-1B visa is ridiculous. And I think it's funny that you mentioned ad hominem attacks after you released a 26-minute video detailing my dad's benzo withdrawal and allergic reactions out on YouTube. It's just funny, like you're going after me for ad hominem.
Well, actually, look, now you've mentioned that, I was going to bring that. Oh, well, hang on. I was going to bring that up. For those who don't know what you're talking about, let's play a little clip from that. Okay, so
Where
Mikhaila,
was the ad hominem attack?
Well, I'll come to you in a moment, Candace. Mikhaila, how did you feel when you heard about that?
Well, I think it's funny because, like, we're connected online, Candace. So if she has an issue with my family, she could literally just message me. Her husband has my husband's phone number, you know? So it's just like a weird thing to do. I don't know where it came from. As for the apple cider reaction, I've gone over this so many times, but it's fair if Candace didn't know this. Although I don't know why you would make a 26-minute video without doing some research. It wasn't apple cider. It was a sodium metabisulfite allergy. And it was near anaphylaxis. And people don't sleep in that state. And when we went through that, which was horrible. It was horrible. We had a hard time with the medical system. We didn't know how to treat it. It took us like years to figure out what the allergy was. If you talk to a doctor and say you have that allergy, they go, what's that? Like, it's not a common allergy, but it's not uncommon. You can Google it. And it just seems a little bit cruel to like pull that up. You also started that video by saying, you know, why is Jordan Peterson's audience, male audience, like diminishing? Let's get into it, which is just, it's manipulative, right? It's not true. So you have this giant audience, Candace, and you say these things as if they're true, which confuses people when they're not. So I don't know what to say about it. It's aggravating, and I think it's a mean girl high school tactic.
Okay, Candace, you're a mean girl.
Again, accusing me of ad hominem attacks when I feel like she's engaging in them. Just to be clear and to contextualize this clip, Jordan Peterson was trending. I cover trends, I cover the news, and I think it's fair to cover topics when they come to the surface. He was essentially tweeting ad hominem attacks that were written like sonnets. It was very bizarre, and people were going, "What's going on with Dr. Jordan Peterson?" And it became a Twitter trend, and so I covered it. Is there something wrong with covering a trending topic? I certainly don't think there is, or I wouldn't have a podcast or things to speak about. Regarding your father's audience, there were a lot of people who, after his addiction and feeling like he was not honest about his addiction, a lot of men who sort of switched off from Jordan Peterson. I mean, that is just a fact. I understand and respect that it is your father,